All right, you guys, this is it. This is the last lesson that we're going to be doing this year, and it is on multiplying and dividing integers. Let's get started. So we're going to start by modeling this with a number line, and it says find each product. And our first problem is 5 times -4. We can actually read this problem as 5 groups of -4, which we can easily model using a number line. So we would start at 0. 5 groups of -4 means you're going to jump 5 times, and each jump is going to be worth -4. So -4, -8, -12, -16, -20. So as you see, we've made 5 jumps. Each jump was worth -4, and that took us down to -20. You're not always going to be using a number line, but it helps us to make sense out of it. So this is a little different. This is -2 times -3, but you can't make negative jumps, right? That doesn't make sense. So we want to think of this as the opposite of 2 groups of -3. 2 groups of -3 we know is going to be 2 jumps worth -3. So here's one jump that's -3, then I'm going to make another jump that's -3. But remember, we had that negative sign in front of the 2. So we actually want the opposite of that. So if 2 jumps, 2 groups of -3 is 6, then the opposite of that is going to be +6. Okay? So if 2 groups of -3 is -6, then the opposite of 2 groups of -3 is going to turn it into a positive. You need to make sure you know these rules, okay? So if you are writing this on paper, not using the handouts, you need to make sure you copy all of this down, okay? These rules are the same no matter if you are multiplying or dividing. If your signs are the same, meaning both of your numbers are positive or both of your numbers are negative, the end result will always be positive, right? We're used to this side, these numbers, these multiplication sentences we're used to. This is new for us, okay? So -4 times -5 is going to be +20. These negatives cancel each other out. So the opposite of a negative is going to give us a positive, okay? The opposite of a negative is going to give us a positive. Now, if our signs are different, if you have a positive and negative or a negative and a positive, that will result in a negative number, okay? So -4 times 5 is -20. Remember, I could reverse those numbers and say 5 times -4. If I have 5 groups of -4, I'm going to end up with a negative number. If I have 7 groups of -3, it's going to give me a negative number, okay? So remember, you could use your properties and flip those numbers around and think of it that way. So signs that are the same, positive number, signs that are different, negative number. So let's find each product. -9 times 3. Well, if you know 9 times 3 is 27, then -9 times 3 is going to give you -27, right? Positive times a negative is going to give us a negative. B, -2 times -8. Well, I know 2 times 8 is 16. 2 negatives, both my signs are negative. That's going to give us a positive, right? 2 times 8 is 16. The negatives cancel each other out. The opposite of a negative gives us a positive. I don't know if you can see that or if my head might be in the way, but that is 16. So now let's try some division practice. Exact same rules apply. The only difference is instead of multiplication, we're going to use division. Okay? 40 divided by -5. Well, I know 40 divided by 5 is 8. Since I have a positive and a negative, that's going to result in a negative answer. Okay? 40 divided by 5 is 8, so 40 divided by -5 is -8. Remember, your division can also be written as a fraction, so don't let this fool you. This is -20 divided by negative 2. It's the same as if we wrote it using the dots and the bar, right? So negative 20 divided by negative 2. I know 20 divided by 2 is 10, and a negative divided by negative is going to give us a positive. So this will result in a positive 10. All right, so here we go with some more practice. Find each quotient. So negative 32 divided by 4. Well, what's 32 divided by 4? 8. You have a positive, you have a negative. That's going to give us a negative answer. So instead of just 8, we're going to call this negative 8. Negative 15, remember this bar is a division bar. Negative 15 divided by negative 3. I know 15 divided by 3 is 5. So these negatives are going to cancel each other out, leaving us with a positive 5. Easy peasy, as long as you know your rules. So remember, when the signs are the same, your answer will be a positive. If your signs are different, your answer will be a negative. The rest of it is your basic facts, which you should already know. Rita's family went hiking last weekend. They walked to the top of a waterfall and then turned around to come back down. It took them 15 minutes to descend 600 feet in elevation at a steady pace. What integer represents their change in elevation each minute? So you have that word descend here. So that's going to be important. Descend means you're going down, right? So descending means we're going down 600 feet. That's going to be a negative number. We need to make sure we know that. So we're taking our negative 600 and we've got to divide it up into 15-minute intervals here because it took 15 minutes to get down the mountain or waterfall, excuse me. So we want to divide this by 15. Negative 600 divided by 15. I've got one positive integer and one negative integer. That means that the answer is going to be negative. It also makes sense because they're walking down. They're not walking up. So that answer should be negative. Well, 60 divided by 15 is 4. So 600 divided by 15 is going to be 40. They're walking down, so negative 40 feet per minute. Another one. An anchor was dropped into the ocean. It sank 60 feet below sea level in 5 seconds. What integer represents the anchor's change in elevation per second? So we know that it's below sea level. That means that 60 is actually negative 60. And it took 5 seconds, so we want to divide that out. 60 divided by 5. 60 divided by 5 is 12, right? But remember, it's below sea level. So it's actually negative 60 divided by 5, which is negative 12. All right, so here you have something interesting, right? Remember, when a number is next to parentheses like this, it's multiplication. So this is the same as saying 2 times negative 5 times negative 4. So I see a positive, a negative, and a negative. But remember, when you have two negatives that you multiply together, that's actually going to turn this into a positive. So then this whole answer is really going to be a positive answer, and we just need to multiply our values together. Now you can do this however you want, but I like to look at the 2 and the 5 first because I know 2 times 5 is 10, and then I know 10 times 4 is 40, right? But remember, we have two negatives. So in the end, those negatives are going to cancel each other out. I could have said negative 5 times negative 4 is positive 20, and then 20 times 2 is 40. We could have done it that way. So find the value of 5 times 3 times negative 6. So I'm already thinking about the sign of my answer here. I know that these two positives are going to give us a positive. But I have one negative sign hanging out here, just one. So it's not going to cancel out with anything. That tells me this end answer is going to remain a negative number. You can multiply this in whatever order you want. So you could start with 5 times 3. 5 times 3 is 15, and then 15 times 6. If you want to be super fancy, you could do 3 times 6, and then multiply that by 5. Personally, though, I'm looking at 5 and 6 because I know 5 times 6 is 30, and I can easily multiply that by 3 in my head. So 30 times 3 is 90. I have one negative sign. It's not going to cancel out with anything else. That means our answer is going to be negative 90. That's it, you guys. As long as you remember your rules, this is going to be pretty easy, right? So when your signs are the same, 2 positives or 2 negatives, that answer is always going to be a positive answer, whether you're multiplying or dividing. When your signs are different, a positive and a negative or a negative and a positive, that will always give you a negative answer, whether you are multiplying or dividing. So the rules are going to be the same. The key here is to remember your math facts though too. So don't get tripped up on those easy math facts. If you need me, you know how to find me.